Welcome into the Illinicast. I'm your host, Austin Berkland, alongside Sonny Verma, and we are the Illinicast, part of the Big Banter Podcast Network. No guests today, just wanted to recap the Illini versus FAU game and a wild weekend in the Big Ten last week in week 4 of the college football season. Can't believe we're already around a quarter of the way through this season, and we still have no idea who this Illini football team is, but that's okay. We'll get to it here in a little bit. Sonny, how was your weekend?
Weekend was fabulous. We get to celebrate an Illini victory. The Big Ten West looks awful, but who cares about my weekend? Austin, how was your vacation?
Oh, I went to Moab, Utah, one of the most beautiful places on the face of the earth. Went to Arches National Park, went to Canyonlands National Park with my beautiful wife, Audrey Searles, and it was just a blast seeing the different sites. Haven't been to that part of the country before, haven't ever touched the mountainous region of the United States. So it was nice seeing that and just kind of being away, kind of shutting off the phone for a little bit. But I will admit that I checked the Illini score when I probably shouldn't have checked the Illini score, and I was freaking out because I didn't have the best service in Utah. So I was like, "Am I watching Illinois lose to FAU?" And then I turned off my phone essentially, and I was like, "They came back, right?" So I went back to the cave that we were staying in. Yes, I said a cave, a part of our Airbnb, and I checked it again. I was like, "Oh my god, thank God! What the hell happened in that first quarter of that Illini game?" So, yeah, it was crazy checking that in with just GameCast for sure.
It's funny because I also missed the first quarter because I had a function to go to with the misses, and kind of the same deal. Maybe like 5-10 minutes after the game started, I'm like, "Oh, let me check what's going on," and I had like 15, 20 messages, and I'm like, "Wait, what's happening?" And then all of a sudden, my Twitter's blowing up, and I'm like, "You've got to be kidding me!" So I'm looking at the score, down 10-0, and I was like, "All right, we got to go home. I got some work to do. I got a game to watch." And I am sure we're gonna talk about it in a few minutes. I watched what I think was a pretty actually dominating performance by our squad. Maybe because I missed that first quarter. Everyone else saw that first quarter, whereas I didn't. But everything I saw from the second quarter on, I was actually very impressed with.
Yeah, you're like the character in the novel that was checked in the third chapter, and you're like, "Hey, this one main character is pretty good," even though you missed the murder in chapter 1.
Right? Exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like this Illini team, number 1, they haven't got the consistency game to game, but even quarter to quarter, this team hasn't been able to build upon their identity. I keep saying that word because that's kind of what Brett Bielema's teams are built on, an identity, and it feels like some of that is being missed game to game and quarter to quarter.
Yeah, it's tough because we're, as you said, 25% of the way through the college football season, and there really hasn't been a quarter where you're like, "Oh, this is Illini football." Whether it's the offense having miscues or the defense just not showing up for the first couple games. Even this game, while the second quarter was pretty well done on our end. We had to deal with some injuries in the second half. The first quarter, when I did go back to watch the recaps, it, again, our offensive line issues aren't going away, and Big Ten season is about to start. So we're about to find out if they're as good of a team as you and I think that they can be, or if they're not as good as the rest of the Big Banter Twitter and my Twitter timeline thinks.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this game, uh, Illinois starting down 10-0. Second quarter, though, Illinois scores 14 unanswered points, then followed up with 9 more points in the third quarter. And then FAU gets that cheapo touchdown at the very end of the game with about 4 minutes left in the quarter. Illinois was able to close it out offensively to end the game. But the slow starts, you can't be doing that against Big Ten teams. I don't care what Big Ten team it is. Obviously, Minnesota learned that lesson against
Mhm.
Northwestern, which we'll get to. But you have to start bringing in at least a B minus game here and there to be competitive, to make a bowl game, to get to the level where people between Twitter and our expectations can be at least be a 7 and 8 win team, and showcase that you are moving forward as a program, that you can be again consistent, but only year to year.
Yeah, and that first quarter, it's the offensive line miscues. We had Luke Altmaier running for his life, fumbling the ball, and it's just, I mean, he had a great game. And again, honestly, I'm not going to feel too bad about it because you just described what happened in the game. From the second period on, it was pretty impressive. We had, I think, over 520 yards or something like that. Yeah, we only had 23 points to show for it, but the way I'm looking at it, Austin, is when I started the game, it was 0-0, second quarter, right? We scored 23. It was basically 23-7 from the point I started watching, and I think it was Aiden Lottery turned down a touchdown at the end of the game that we could have gotten to basically to run out the clock. So in an alternate universe, this game was actually 30-7 in my eyes. Okay, this is how I'm going to think through my
Mm-hmm.
blue and orange glasses. Um, the good thing is we saw a lot of young guys playing. We lost a lot of guys in that first half, including our cornerbacks, and the cornerbacks who stepped up in their place, Zachary Tobe, amazing. Like they kept throwing it at him, and he kept deflecting. I think I saw he had the highest PFF grade of all freshmen in the country this past week. We saw glimpses of all of our young running backs, which you and I have been talking about. I think Reggie Love easily could have gotten 100 yards had he not um, had to sit out. It's one of those where again there's a lot more positives than the final score would hint to you.
I mean, you look at what Vegas anticipated in this game. Illinois was a 16-point favorite, and I know FAU scored that touchdown in the fourth quarter, but Illinois kind of fell in line with expectations of what this game could look like. It would have been a 14-point game, 2 points away from the spread, and it just boils down to a lot of meat left on those bones. You look at the penalty yardage, 6 penalties for 72 yards, 2 fumbles lost by the Illini. I mean, it boils down to being disciplined, playing some disciplined football. Stop the penalties, stop the turnovers, and you can start to see that Illinois is a more complete football team, but they can't just keep shooting themselves in the foot week after week after week. There's only been one game so far that they've won the penalty battle, and that was against Penn State, but that's when Luke Altmaier threw 4 interceptions. So if you cut down on those errors, I think Illinois can still be a really, really solid football team.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is though we just keep saying if.
Yep.
I feel like we've been saying that every single game. And now it's kind of when the real season starts. We got 8 games left, and I think 6 of them are against Big Ten West teams. So nobody has jumped out of the pack from the West. And I watched recaps of every single game. I'm genuinely still positive thinking on where Illinois can finish. But the same thing you just talked about right now, Brett and the coaches have got to be getting in the heads of the players in the locker room now. Hey guys, the real season starts now. These mistakes that you're getting away with against Toledo and FAU, you're going to be treated the same way Kansas treated you. Those teams are more talented and they're going to run away, and you're not going to necessarily have the firepower to get back every single week. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely things that we still need to work on, and I hope Brett has them focused because obviously there's going to be a lot of distractions coming up for Saturday's game.
I mean, I know every coordinator is not without their faults, but I think I was a little too harsh on Barry Lenny Jr. I mean, I feel like he called a really good football game
I agree.
this past week on Saturday. Like he brought Isaiah Williams, got him in some unique positions to get the ball. I mean, he had 8 receptions for 120 yards. I mean, that's what you want from Isaiah Williams. Yes, you might want a touchdown in there, but he's a guy that's moving the defense side to side, making it hell for defensive backs. And then you can have guys like Pat Bryant have a long touchdown pass. It opens things up for the tight end Griffin Moore because that defense is scrambling to find where Isaiah Williams is in the slot. Is he in the backfield? And it just causes some chaos. So Barry Lenny Jr. has done a better job of finding Isaiah Williams throughout, but it boils down to a lot of what this offensive line is going to do against Big Ten caliber opponents. If they can't protect Luke Altmaier, if Luke Altmaier is constantly in his head, like, I need to get this ball out within a millisecond, we're going to see games that are more closely resembling Penn State than not. So it's up to this offensive line. It's up to them to show the pride that they can be a good Big Ten offensive line. They can be respectable at least. If not, it could be a longer season for Luke Altmaier than Luke Altmaier anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, I want to go back to what you said about Barry Lenny Jr. Yeah, the week before we were giving Aaron Henry props. I really liked what I saw from Barry Lenny Jr. This past weekend. Last week we were talking about how if our upperclassmen wide receivers aren't going to show up, it might be time to bring some of the younger guys up. And what happened? Like you said, Bryant and Williams had just fantastic games. They were stretching the field. Griffin Moore had that flea flicker touchdown, which you don't really see very often in Illinois football. But what I'm glad is that this game at least had to have shut up all the Altmaier haters because he bounced back. He had one of his best games. He was when he was scrambling for his life, but he'd made some throws. I don't know if you got a chance to catch the Isaiah Williams Moss catch. Just
Oh yeah.
amazing. Just beautiful. There's some wonderful camera angles of it on Twitter as well. Luke Altmaier he played his butt off, and Brett talked about in his post game press conference how he called Altmaier right after the Penn State game, like before he went to bed, and he's like, I just wanted him to know that we had 100% confidence in him. There was not going to be any change in quarterback. I wanted him to go to bed knowing he was our guy, and I loved hearing that. So I can't imagine how much Luke Altmaier loved hearing that because that's what a good coach does. A good coach knows that he's going to have a quarterback, no matter how talented, who's going to make mistakes. And when the whole world is trying to turn on him, to have your coach's backing, that must have been a confidence boost moving forward in practice this past week.
I mean, I got to give props to the rushing attack as well. I know FAU isn't as good as the rest of the opponents that Illinois has faced this year, but this was their best rushing effort as a team. They had 207 yards rushing, and Reggie Love and Josh McCray leading the pack there. And then you had GCMS native Aiden Lowry score his first touchdown since his time at GCMS. That just makes me feel a little bit more confident in this rushing attack, and it takes away some of the pressures of the O line to pass block all the time. If they can get going in the run game, and just build some confidence and just play the bulldozer. It's a lot easier to do that than to pass protect all the time. So the fact that they got the game going um, where they could rely on that a little bit, that made me feel good in terms of what Brett Bielema likes to do offensively.
Yeah, and that was exactly what Brett Bielema likes to do offensively. He brought in the young guys, and the young guys did their jobs once they got in. We had, as you mentioned, 3 or 4 running backs, just complete change of pace, wearing FAU out. We had the young guys get a chance to, get a couple carries. The 3 things I'm most satisfied about of this game were Luke Altmaier, easy number one, because I was hoping for a bounce back game because there was a lot of people in my ears talking about they know people at Ole Miss who were saying that the reason they chose Jackson Dart is that Luke Altmaier might have one of those, he might be a little insecure, might be a little soft, and so they were waiting for one bad game that he might just kind of spiral. And that's not what happened at all. That's the main thing I was really enjoying. The second thing is the running back crew. They all, as you said, we can't let all the pressure be on Luke Altmaier. He's amazing. He's, I think, the best quarterback we've had in a long time, but he's young, and putting all the pressure to win every single game on him is just too much. And the third is our red zone defense. I think, FAU was throwing everybody against Drazon Newton, not letting him get to the quarterback. And Keith Randolph probably had his best game of the season. And that was nice to see.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and we talk about that defense. It's a lot different whenever you're going with 6'3" defensive backs versus 5'11" defensive backs, and you could tell the length immediately, especially on that interception in the end zone by the Illini, that the added length helped out a lot in clogging up some passing lanes, in getting a hand up, and causing that deflection to the interception. I mean, that is so helpful. I mean, you look at the prototype of Ryan Walters or Aaron Henry's defensive backs. They are a taller bunch. I mean, Devin Witherspoon is a taller defensive back, and you saw what he did for the Seattle Seahawks this past Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of the mold. And if you're starting these freshmen a little bit younger, that's only going to allow them to grow and continue that DBU kind of influence that Illinois has been since the likes of Kirby Joseph.
You're exactly right. It's you've noticed, in the recruiting that if the minimum height pretty much to get any attention from Illinois is 6 feet, 6'1", and so you're missing out on some talented guys who could be 5'10", uh, 5'11", but you see why now. You can see that the raw talent is there, but you can't teach height. You can mold talent. You can't really teach height. And some of those plays in the red zone again, where Tobe came in and you can tell the game plan was, hey, Nicholson's out. Let's throw it at the guy replacing him. Let's grab 6. Let's grab 7. And he just shut him down over and over again. And it's got to be such a confidence booster for that kid. And it's a confidence booster for me because it's just nice seeing that we lost so much talent in that backfield in the to the NFL draft that it could replenish itself. That we got the young guys there. The coaches are putting the players in position during practice week to that when they're called upon, they can excel. And so, yeah, I mean, the cornerback size is just also just another wonderful aspect that I'm glad Brett Bielema is kind of making our team a little bit bigger.
I mean, Zachary Tobe and Sabor Kareem were both the leaders in pass deflections this past Saturday for the Illini. I mean, and Tyler Strain had the most tackles at 8, and he's a sophomore. So the youth of this defensive back room was a little concerning before the season, but the fact that they are able to perform at such a level, I know it's against FAU, and I want to see it against Big Ten opponents, but it shows how bright the future is at that position, even without Ryan Walters helping that recruiting effort.
Yeah, and truthfully, like again, that's why I'm so optimistic with this game compared to everyone else. In this game, you saw a lot of our youth, whether it be our running backs. We had 3 or 4 guys all share carries and get some game time, and then it was our cornerbacks. Who all got some play times, got balls thrown at them, and they excelled. We weren't sure how they were going to react once Big Ten season starts. If they were so green. So the fact that they've got that game experience now, right as we start against Purdue, and again the next 6 out of the 8 is going to be against the Big Ten West. I'm glad that they got a chance to kind of catch up to game speed because I think it's going to be important for them to reach the 8 wins that I think they're going to hit.
I mean, the Big Ten West wide receivers, there are some talented individuals throughout sprinkled out throughout the West, but it's not the game plan of these Big Ten West coaches to really air the ball out too terribly much. I mean, Luke Fickle has even shown that he's still great with the ground and pound of the Big Ten West with Wisconsin. Maryland's the only team that I'm really like super scared of going up against. Number one, because Tawalia is just unbelievable as a quarterback. Their offensive weapons are insane, and their team speed just gives me nightmares. But the rest of this Big Ten West, I feel like these freshmen can compete with. Uh, they'll get burned a few times. That's the nature of being a freshman. But I'm not terrified that they are going to cost Illinois a game.
I mean, I don't know if you saw the stat. Iowa has thrown 14 balls this season. 14 throws. That I mean, even Army has like 25 or 26 passes this year. So I mean, I don't know what's going on over there in Iowa City, but you're exactly right. It's not like our cornerbacks are going to necessarily be tested too much in the remaining schedule, but I'd rather have the confidence that if they were to be tested, that they can excel. And I think last Saturday we saw that when their name is called, they'll be able to step up.
Absolutely, and I just still have some confidence in Illinois reaching Indianapolis. Like
It's happening,
these,
Austin. It's happening.
yeah, these first 4 games, there's been some big time negatives. Don't get me wrong. There's also been some positives, not as many, but I feel like we've already played our toughest part of the schedule. I know you still have Wisconsin and Iowa on the schedule, and those are going to be some physical matchups, but I feel like the way these first 4 teams have played, it's a little bit different than how Illinois was recruiting to play against. Like, if Illinois was in the Big 12, they would be recruiting for more speed on the defensive side of the ball to counteract some mobile quarterbacks, some of the spread type formations that the Big 12 likes to run. So, I think in this Big 10 West, I feel like Illinois still has the dogs to win that race. So, it's been fascinating to watch that there have been so many negatives still, but yet I still feel as optimistic as I am for the final parts of the season.
I mean, I know a lot of Illini fans are a little deflated because it took, to the last drive to beat Toledo, and we kind of got ran off the field against Kansas, and that kind of set the mood for the beginning part of the season. But we really, according to Vegas, we won the games that we were supposed to win, and we lost the games we were supposed to lose. I think genuinely every team in the Big Ten West, the best that they would have gone with our schedule was 2-2, and that's exactly where we are. I think Kansas would boat race Wisconsin. I think they would win the Big Ten West at this point, like you kind of called
Absolutely.
after our first episode of the season. So again, that's why I'm kind of more optimistic. I've seen the other Big Ten teams. No, everyone has got their holes, and I'm not saying we don't. But I thought we were going to win the division at the beginning of the year. I still think it's going to happen. I think a lot of we were on national TV in that Kansas loss, and so a lot of national writers essentially wrote us off from that point on. So following that up with a butt whooping from Penn State, which wasn't a butt whooping for 2.5 quarters, and especially compared to what they did to Iowa just on Saturday, all the makes our game all the more impressive. I'm not going to go back to it, but again, it's just the worst game of our quarterback's career is what kind of had that game go awry for us. But I'm feeling good. Ryan Walters, we're going to West Lafayette. I'm looking forward to the back and forth and that what that rivalry is going to bring. And I'm excited because I watched the game against they played Wisconsin last week. I think it was a Friday night game. I watched that game. I don't think Wisconsin looked all that impressive. I think it was just Purdue not being at the level that they need to be at because they had to replenish so much of that talent.
Yes, Illinois does take on Purdue. That is on Saturday at 2:30. And make sure you have your phones updated. Make sure you have your smart TVs updated and make sure you downloaded Peacock onto your device of choice because that's the only way you're going to watch this game is through the streaming service Peacock. So, or go to a bar. Those are your probably 2 options in seeing this Illini game. So, yeah, do you have Peacock already, Sonny?
I do. I'm a big English Premier League fan, so that's the only way to watch pretty much every game. So I heard a lot of Twitter complaining about that, but this is just reality. Okay, the Big Ten just signed a huge media deal that Illinois is going to make an incredible amount of money for. But in exchange for that, these networks want to make their money back, and so they're going to have some of the primetime matches on their paid services. Peacock, I think the regular price is $5.99 a month. If you're a student, $199 a month. Alumni, I believe, is $39.99 a month. I'm not gonna lie, if you're halfway decent at Googling, you can find promo codes for $1.99 a month. Everywhere on Google. So it's just reality. Look, we can complain all we want about Peacock, but in a couple years, our gyms are going to be bigger than the rest of the country. Our facilities are going to be better than the rest of the country, and this is just a small price we have to pay.
I mean, I'm not going to turn this into a Peacock ad because they obviously don't sponsor the Illini Cast, but I
We're
mean,
open though, Peacock. If you want to
yes,
reach out to us in the
eh,
DMs.
NBC, Comcast, come our way. But anyway, I mean, you can watch The Office, you can watch Parks and Rec, you can watch The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin and WrestleMania.
Oh, that's
I
right. Yeah.
mean, the all the content that's on NBC. I mean, they were the premier like Thursday night comedy channel for so long. NBC was. All those shows are right there for you. I mean, it's the depth of content in Peacock is highly underrated compared to like what trash reality is on Netflix most of the time. So if you want to drop Netflix and get Peacock, I mean, the content is there, especially if you want your Illini, you want your English Premier League, if you're a Crystal Palace fan, because you're not going to be on NBC anytime soon, you're going to always be on Peacock. So
See, I'm a Newcastle
it's
fan, so life is pretty good for me. Now I get all the good games TV channels now.
that's right. I mean, so yeah, drop Netflix, get Peacock is what we're saying to get your Illini fix because you're going to see a lot of basketball games on Peacock as well coming up.
And again, you're supporting the Big Ten. This is what is going to enhance us from the other middle tier teams in other conferences, and we're going to be making more money than the Clemsons and the other powerhouses in the other conferences are simply because of our media deal. So for $1.99 a month, guys, come on, let's just put it down. And let's just support our team.
Absolutely. And speaking of the Big Ten, let's review some of these week 4 matchups. The team that we face this upcoming Saturday, Purdue, they lost to Wisconsin 38-17. And there were some massive duds by the quarterback of Purdue, Hudson Card, having 2 interceptions, 21 for 38 through the air. It feels like Purdue is kind of reeling. Brian Walters is struggling in his first year trying to find that identity. I'm sure he'll have me laughing about that on Saturday if Purdue pulls the victory out against Illinois. But right now, it feels like Purdue is trying to find it a little bit.
Yeah, it's one of those things where obviously they're a huge rival of ours moving forward. But if I'm going to be honest, yeah, they won the Big Ten West last year, but they lost a lot of talent off that team. And Ryan Walters is a brand new head coach. They're going to have growing pains. And, the promising thing is, we tried for Hudson Card and we ended up getting Luke Altmaier. And I think right now, through week 4, it's about neck and neck between the
Yep.
power rankings between the two quarterbacks. Obviously Luke had a really bad game against a premier opponent. But so far, I like what I see out of Luke. And, Hudson's a good quarterback too, but I'll take our guy.
We had Michigan. They beat Rutgers 31-7 for Rutgers' first loss of the season. And it was also Jim Harbaugh's first game back on the sideline for the Michigan Wolverines. And tell you what, he doesn't give free ads, but he loved the YouTube TV quad view for sure during his 3-game suspension whenever he wasn't on the chain gang for his high school son's football team. So Rutgers, they are who we thought they were, or maybe a little bit better, possibly a bowl team if they don't have to face Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. I think they can fit kind of nicely right below the Maryland tier of the Big Ten East.
Yeah, I mean Michigan State's kind of in a free fall, and so I have they played Indiana yet? I don't think. I'm not. I forget if they have, and I'm not sure if they got Northwestern on their schedule. But if they do, then that's 3 games right there. That's 3 possible.
Rutgers Rutgers has faced in the Big Ten. They've defeated Northwestern in Week 1.
Okay,
Just faced Michigan. They face Wisconsin, Michigan State, Indiana, Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State, and Maryland.
ouch. Okay, so that's
So,
pretty tough. That's pretty tough.
yes.
Actually, that's a pretty daunting schedule.
So, 4 wins against Michigan State, 5 against Indiana, and it's finding one game out of Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State, and Rutgers. If Iowa's offense is struggling that much going into November 11th, Rutgers could be primed for that upset because they're going to feel optimistic about where they are as a program as opposed to Iowa and possibly having to come to the realization that they might have to fire Brian Ferentz.
Against Iowa, you just got to get to 14. If you can get to 14,
Yes.
you set yourself up. You set yourself up. So that's got to be the game plan.
And then we had Maryland. They throttled Michigan State 31-9, two programs that are kind of at that crossroads of that X and Y bar graph or line graph, pardon me, because Maryland, they are on that upswing. Mike Loxley has done an excellent job with that program recruiting that DC area. We've seen it at Illinois in 2007, what he can do recruiting wise. And he has taken that to a whole nother level for Maryland. And they are that fourth team in that Big Ten East. And I know it's going to change once divisions go away, but Maryland seems like a program that you should want to buy a little bit of stock in. I'm not saying that they're going to be a boomer next year with the changes, but their bowl game consistently level now as a program.
Yeah, I think they're the most confident team in the Big Ten right now. I'm not saying they're the best team, but I think the mood. Mike Loxley set it up at the Big Ten, the media day. Where he legit said, this is the most talented team I've ever had, and I think they're not being shy. I think they've covered the spread in every single game. They're airing it out. They know they got a good quarterback. Now they've had a pretty cupcake schedule up until now, so it'll be interesting to see what happens once they do play someone who can kind of punch back a little bit. But yeah, Maryland's riding high, and they're getting a lot of love, and right now it's well deserved. But I'm just kind of taking a wait and see approach, and we'll see them in a couple of weeks as well.
Nebraska 28, Louisiana Tech 14. Louisiana Tech, they are 2-3 on the year. Nebraska 2-2. But it took Nebraska up until the fourth quarter to finally put that game away. It was 0-0 at the end of the first quarter, and that Matt Rule offense just seems to be struggling on every single level this year. I don't think they will find their offensive footing this year, at least. It's going to take a couple recruiting classes for Matt Rule to finally get his program going, I feel like.
Nebraska's simply not good. I mean, I go at it back and forth with the Nebraska fan base more than anyone else on my Twitter. I don't know,
They're the
they just don't.
biggest.
Yeah, they are the bigs. You're exactly right. But I mean, they're just not a good team. Their first win came up against NIU, who had just lost to Southern Illinois the week before. That was an
Yep.
impressive win. You just told me why this victory against Louisiana Tech wasn't an impressive win. We play them 2 weeks from now, I think October 6th or so. I'm looking forward to that matchup. They will be good. I think they got the right coach. I think that school always recruit well, but this year, I'm not too worried about them.
Yeah, I think the Big Ten adding a couple schools from California will help that Nebraska California pipeline come back like it was under Tom Osborne in the 1990s, at least. So that is going to give them a little bit of leg of up on the competition in the Big Ten because I still feel like there's some Nebraska diehards in the California coaching ranks over there. So I feel like that's going to help them out a little bit. But you got to wait until they're officially in the conference to take advantage of that pipeline. So it's going to take a little bit of time. Ohio State 17 and the 10-man Notre Dame defense 14.
Did you watch this game at all, Austin?
Yeah, I was so my Airbnb was a little literal cave and I don't know how they got Wi-Fi out there, but I was praising the Lord for that because I was able to watch the end of that game and I just couldn't believe how McCord was able to dissect that Notre Dame defense who suffocated him all game long to allow him to just do get whatever he wanted in that final drive was shocking. I thought Notre Dame had that game locked up on that final possession, but credit to that Ohio State offense, credit to that toughness. Ryan Day, okay, don't come after me like you came after Lou Holtz, but
No. He
um,
only goes after people 80 and over.
that's good. He can check my ID to showcase that I'm not of age of that. But I mean, that Ohio State receiving core, Emeka and Marvin Harrison Jr. and even some of the other guys like Cade Stover, it's just an embarrassment of riches in that room. And uh, Notre Dame had him locked up until that final possession, and then Freeman didn't want an offsides call, so he didn't send out his final defender. I don't understand the logic behind that if
I don't
I'm a
think there
Notre
was
Dame
logic.
fan.
I think it was Marcus Freeman trying to cover up for a coach who obviously made a blunder, and he's because I mean it's a half a yard. I mean, again, there's two premier Big Ten games on Saturday, and that one absolutely lived up to its billing. It was just two heavyweights going at it, back and forth. I'm really impressed with Notre Dame. I think, if this is their only loss in the season, they should absolutely be in the playoff conversation at the end of the year. Like you said, it's some of Ohio State's guys just couldn't do anything against that Notre Dame defense. Kyle McCord, he's getting a lot of love, especially from media, for that last drive, which was definitely impressive. But I saw, quarterback performance of the week. I'm like, come on, he went like 21 for 40. I think he had like 230 yards or something like that. It's let's give other guys some credit. Not everything has to be Ohio State, but I think Ryan Day needed that win. That little outburst he had at the end of the game. You can tell he's been feeling a little pressure. Like we've talked about on this podcast with various guests we've had. We've talked about it with the Ohio State guys. There's whispers now, and now it's not just Michigan that's really really good. That game that they're going to have against Penn State is going to be a 50-50 toss up. So having this win, it's the best win in the Big Ten by far of any teams, and Ohio State has it. Michigan hasn't had that marquee win yet. I mean, they've got the easiest schedule, them in Georgia, of anyone in the country. Penn State's had a couple good wins, but Ohio State's the first of the big three to really go toe to toe with a heavyweight, and they came away with the win, which is good for the conference. But it'll be interesting to see moving forward whether Kyle McCord really does take that step up, or if it's just that he just had a really good drive.
Penn State 31, Iowa 0. Not a single point on the board for the Iowa Hawkeyes in this matchup. You look at total yards, Penn State 397, Iowa 76.
Okay, no, you just said that stat. You
76.
just said that stat, Austin. 76 total yards. Look at how many plays Penn State ran.
Let's see here. Rushing attempts 17, passing attempts 16. So
Oh wait, no. So maybe I'm looking at the wrong set. Basically, what I saw was Penn State ran more plays, which was somewhere in the 90s, compared to Iowa had total yardage. It was. I mean, I had that game on my second screen, and we talked about how the first game lived up to the billing. Oh my god, this game was so bad. It was just a beatdown. At one point, I was talking to my buddies. I'm like, "Has Iowa touched the ball yet?" Because it just seemed like every time I looked at the screen, Penn State was driving. That whiteout, I think, is the coolest looking television that college football has every single year. I'm really looking forward to if one day Illinois gets that chance, to go out there and really experience that live. But this game was a beatdown. Iowa has so many questions still. Their defense didn't even look that great this time around, and it's one of those where, they, I don't know what to say because I have one Iowa friend who I go back and forth with constantly, and he doesn't know if like France is just being stubborn. Like at this point, like he's trying to win it his way, or if he's actually trying. Because to me, it doesn't look like there are any adjustments being made, and I don't know. They got to figure it out because.
I mean, Cade McNamara even kind of
Yeah,
distanced himself from the
yeah,
offense. He said, I'm not the one calling the plays. I just run what's called for me. I mean, he does not seem to be too happy, which newsflash, Cade McNamara, what were you thinking going to Iowa in the first place?
yeah.
It's where offense goes to die with Brian Ferentz. Everyone in the preseason, I was sick and tired of hearing about it. And I'm glad it's finally coming to fruition where, oh no, they have Cade McNamara now. This offense is going to light up. It's going to be better than what you anticipate. It has shown nothing of the sort. Their defense won them that Iowa State game, and Penn State just showcased what frauds they are on offense as many believers as there were in the preseason. So I had no idea where that talk was coming from. Yes, it might have been incrementally better because you do have that better quarterback, but it's not going to be, it was not ever going to be transformative. It was never going to be like, oh man, Iowa's offense, class of the Big Ten West, class of the Big Ten, line them up for the Rose Bowl right outside the college football playoff. They're there. I never saw it. I never saw it from the onset.
Bud Elliott said it perfectly. It was in the preseason actually. He's like, everyone's hyping up this new Iowa offense this year with all the transfer portal moves that they made, but they didn't make a transfer portal for the most important position in on that offense, and that's the offensive coordinator. And that's exactly right. The guy just doesn't know what he's doing. He's in way over his head. Seems like a nice guy, but he needs to go get a job in the NFL somewhere because right now, all of Iowa City hates the guy, and the rest of the nation, we don't blame them.
I mean, it's like that first year of Tim Beckman where they had two co-offensive coordinators where one was doing like the first and third downs, the other was doing like second and fourth down. Just a crazy scheme. You could have added Marvin Harrison Jr. and Johnny Manziel to that offense, and it would not be that great, like comparatively to what that talent is. And I feel like that similar situation where Cade McNamara, I feel, is a great quarterback. I feel like he is probably the second best quarterback in the Big Ten West. So I think that I think that's going to be a real issue for Iowa to even attract top talent coming in the upcoming years, especially with the transfer portal.
Like, what do you say to them? Like, what do you say to a hot shot wide receiver when they can simply look at your box score and see that you've thrown the ball 14 times through 4 games? I don't understand. Like, it's not the quarterback. Everyone said it was the quarterback last year. This year, they brought in a quarterback, who has championship pedigree, and he's thrown less than Petras did last year. So it's like, it's one of those where if they're not making an adjustment, then I'm glad as an Illinois fan, we just got to get to 14, get to 21, 23 against that defense. And of course, that's, a daunting task in itself. But their offense is just, it's still clueless. And, if I were a fan of any other team, I'd feel sad for them. But no, not a big Iowa Hawkeye guy.
So I was sitting in the cave and my phone was starting to like smoke a little bit because I just constantly had to keep going, changing from game to game between the Akron, Indiana game and Minnesota and Northwestern. I was like, what the hell's going on? Is this Big Ten after dark going on? Indiana barely pulls through over Akron 29-27 in 4 overtimes. Akron had a chance at the very end of regulation
Yeah.
to kick a field goal and win the game, and the kicker just janked it. So Indiana is lucky that they are 2-2 over the on the season, but it feels like the wheels are falling off completely of the Tom Allen train, and some hotshot offensive coordinator, hotshot young coach is going to be reaping the new Big Ten revenue rewards by becoming the new coach of the Indiana Hoosiers.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't watch any of that game, but I mean, you said everything. It's just, I don't know if you saw that pitiful social media video that the Indiana football team released afterwards of the guys doing some traditional, like the football team was in the locker room. Tom Allen was like leading some kind of singing, but even the guys looked like, they didn't want to be on camera. It's like, come on, we just embarrassed ourselves in front of everyone watching this game. So there's a mood going on over there in Bloomington, and it's not a good one.
I mean, the ball was at the Indiana 14 when Akron had a chance to win that game. Akron had an 88.6% chance of winning that game, and it didn't happen. And Indiana got lucky. My gosh, that program is not in a good place. And we as Illinois fans know that hell all too well of the final year of a head coach where you're just like, can the season just fast forward? Like, can we just fire him so we can fire up the head coaching hot boards on the various message boards? Like, come on, let's get this over with. Like, Indiana is in that spot right now. But with that comes some optimism of who's going to be that next coach, and there's going to be a lot of sexy options that are going to want that Big Ten money. Finally, last game of the Big Ten slate that ended: Minnesota 34, Northwestern 37. What? In overtime.
So I kind
This
of
is this
go ahead.
is a this was a crazy game that I was watching, and I just couldn't believe my eyes. You thought PJ Fleck was a much better coach than that to allow a game like that to take place.
Yeah, because it wasn't a game where Minnesota was, making mistakes and turning the ball over and just, it's not a game that Northwestern fumbled itself to a win. Northwestern just completely turned it on at the end of the game, and they stole that win. Like they legit earned that victory at the end. So what are they at? 2 wins now?
Yeah, they are 2-2 on the year. So, scoring summary of that game:
Yeah.
first quarter, Minnesota 7-0. Second quarter, it was 17-7 in the scoring.
Mm-hmm.
Third quarter, Minnesota 7, Northwestern 3. Fourth quarter, the let's close it out, let's row the boat, ski you ma. It's the fourth quarter. Drive to the end of the creek. Let's go. Minnesota 0, Northwestern 21. 21 unanswered points by the Northwestern Wildcats, who aren't even supposed to win a game this year, who are 1 point underdogs to UTEP at one point this season. So, PJ Fleck, we got to look at that mirror. This offense of yours scored some points, 34, but ugh, that's got to leave a bad taste in your mouth.
I think you nailed it perfectly. That was a dumbfounding loss. I mean, you know, we're not PJ Fleck guys, but I think he's a good coach. I just think we Big Ten has brought in some better coaches, but I thought he was too good of a coach for something like that to happen against a team like Northwestern. Again, Minnesota is another team which was projected ahead of us, so it's. I'm just waiting for everyone else to kind of catch up to what you and I have been saying all season long. Northwestern, I'm curious now, how many more games do you think they need to win before Braun is considered for the full-time gig?
I think he is spoiled meat, regardless of how they do. I think it would take a bowl game, in all honesty,
No,
to
geez. Okay, so
kind
that's
of,
not.
kind of, kind of clear that palette. Because I feel like, again, with that Big Ten money coming in, I feel like Northwestern has all the incentive in the world to open up the coaching search, see what you can pull out. Because are there coaches in the ACC that are like, "Hey, I want that Big Ten money"? Are there coaches in the Big 12 that are like, "Hey, I want that Big Ten money"? Like, what a Lance Leipold be like? Sorry, Kansas, I know what we've done is special, but look how much money Northwestern has. Come on
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And he can go back to the Midwest, which I know he thoroughly enjoys. So, yeah, I think it would have to take a bowl for that. But Northwestern was an 11 and a half point underdogs in that game. Louisiana, who Minnesota plays next, they are only 11-point favorites. So
No.
Northwestern was a bigger underdog than Louisiana was. And Northwestern played at home. So this Minnesota team has a lot of problems they need to figure out, even against a team like Louisiana, because obviously 11-point spreads aren't safe for them.
It's funny you hear, anytime there's a job opening that comes up anywhere, you always hear PJ Fleck's name, and so I've been reading PJ Fleck's name, for that Michigan State job.
If I'm
So it's
Michigan State, I'm like, why do I want a coach that just lost to
exactly
Northwestern
right.
of all
Yeah,
teams,
it's one of
or
those where he did not have a good showing.
a coach that hasn't beat Illinois in 2 straight years?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
I mean,
and well, yeah, and that
there's
program, yeah, exactly. And shout out to the Ski Pod. I think they're the ones who said that PJ Fleck has the best agent in the country because his name will always pop out for any of these key jobs, and he gets a raise out of it.
I'm trying to think of like a pro comp to what PJ Fleck is. I don't think he's Mike Tomlin level. I I'm trying,
Mm,
like, is he like Frank Reich, where it's all hype and never truly matches? Because with the Colts, it was like, oh, Frank Reich, Eagles offensive coordinator. What a genius. And then he always fell consistently on his face, and he's doing that at Carolina.
Oh, who's that?
So,
Who's that? The coach the Cardinals just fired,
oh,
who kept
Cliff
fumbling up.
Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, yeah. But
Yes.
PJ was a better coach than Kingsbury though.
Yeah, I mean, PJ Fleck's hasn't gotten an NFL job by failing forward like that.
Yeah,
So,
but his story's
um,
incredible.
yeah, I think PJ Fleck is kind of in a situation where this might be the best he gets. This might be the best, and I think he kind of will kick himself. He's like probably like, man, I should have left a couple years ago. Man, I should have left at this point, because I think his flaws are being exposed. I think his recruiting has fallen off a cliff because a guy like Brett Bielema is in Illinois now, and he's not just going to let Minnesota steal all of this Illinois talent from behind their closed doors. So I think it's in big. I think it's trouble time for PJ Fleck. Not that he's on a hot seat or anything, but I feel like his career trajectory is going to look an awful like the plateaus I saw in Utah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I mean, being the head coach at Minnesota isn't a bad gig because again, at least it's a Big Ten job and it's going to be highly sought after. But if Michigan State comes calling, I would say yes so fast. They're going to have a lot of money behind them, especially with them trying to get out of this Mel Tucker contract. Because I mean, I think if PJ, like you said, if PJ isn't at his ceiling, Michigan State level is probably his ceiling. So it's all about what he wants to do. I mean, look at Matt Campbell right now. Matt Campbell wishes he could probably go back to some of the jobs he was reportedly offered back in the day, and PJ may have a couple of decisions to make in the future too.
Absolutely. Sonny, do you have anything else on what this week 4 was like for Illinois or the Big Ten?
No, I just want to tell Illini Nation, stay positive. Yeah, we don't look great, but a lot of the other teams don't look great either. And I think our floor is still higher than everyone else, and we have a great quarterback and a quarterback that can win us games, which we haven't had in a really long time. And everyone else has glaring flaws, but we're still going to win 8.
Yes, I still think Illinois is going to represent the Big Ten West in its final iteration in Indianapolis and get destroyed by Ohio State or Michigan. So I think this is going or possibly win that rematch against Penn State. Who knows? We've already seen it once.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I'm still optimistic in the big picture. I know on Twitter I get awfully pessimistic in the moment because it's very
I got to
frustrating
mute you
at
sometimes,
times.
Austin. Oh my gosh,
It's all good. It is
being a
all
fellow
good.
Cubs fan too, I was just like, I already feel bad, and then your feed's just like, oh. But then well, I'm not going to bring up NFL because you have a lot of good things to say, and we've talked enough NFL. I'm trying to boycott that league for the rest. Watching this Bears football, they're turning me off to the entire sport.
Just watch the Illini guys. They've been doing pretty well. Sidney Brown with that awesome pass
Yeah.
breakup
Oh
against
yeah.
Mike Evans.
Yeah.
Chase McLaughlin kicking well for the Buccaneers. And then Devin Witherspoon has just done great things. And Chase
Yeah.
Brown was a nice little decoy for a Jamar Chase long play Monday night. So a lot of guys are doing well. I mean, you have Baird and Lowe, who is starting for the New England Patriots. So a lot of good things coming from the pro Illini. We should do an episode on that sometime. Maybe get somebody on in the NFL to talk about what these Illini guys are doing so far. But that will be a future episode. Sonny, it's been a pleasure, and I will talk to you later this week.
Sounds good. We got a big game coming up Saturday, so we'll try to bring someone from the Purdue side on. And just remember, please, please, please try to like and subscribe to our channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps bring our Illini content to other people who might also enjoy it. So.
At Illinicast on Twitter, at Illinicast on YouTube, and just search Illinicast on Apple and Spotify. So 4 ways you can consume our content. And then, of course, follow us on our individual Twitter accounts. I'm at AB1132. Sonny, you are at
The Sunny V.
All right. Thank you guys, and we'll talk to you again this week.